Michael Jeffrey Jordan. In the eyes of most people, he's the greatest basketball player who's ever lived. And then there's the Portland Trail Blazers, one of the most cursed and unfortunate franchises of league history. If you're a hardcore basketball fan, then you probably know where I'm going with this. But if you're not, then you're probably thinking, what in the world do these two things have to do with one another? Well, I'll explain that in detail, but first, let's travel back in time all the way back to 1984, where we pick up our story. It's early June of 1984. Michael Jackson is sitting atop of the music charts. Ghostbusters is dominating the domestic box office, and Larry Bird and the Boston Celtics are preparing their title defense. It seemed as if it was just another regular week in the United States. But especially in the world of basketball, something significant was about to happen that would shift the course of the future for the sport. In New York, on the night of June 19th, NBA general managers were preparing for the NBA draft. Many highly anticipated prospects would be selected on this evening. The Houston Rockets had the first overall pick, but the selection was hardly in question, as basically everyone was anticipating the selection of the Nigerian 7-footer Akeem Olajuwon. But after that is where things were expected to get really interesting. The Portland Trail Blazers were slated to select the second overall pick, while the Chicago Bulls were in line to pick third. Available for Portland to select was the dynamic 6'6" shooting guard out of North Carolina, Michael Jordan, who was the ACC Player of the Year and the consensus National Player of the Year. Also available on the draft board was the 7-foot 1-inch center Sam Bowie from the University of Kentucky. Now, Michael Jordan was certainly the more proven collegiate star, as his list of accolades far exceeded the Kentucky big man. But Bowie was a hyped prospect in his own right, as he was also an All-American and appeared to be ready for the NBA spotlight. With Olajuwon being the obvious first choice, all of the attention was on the Portland organization, as the basketball world waited intently to find out their conclusion. Now, the Blazers did like the looks of Jordan, but they felt like they had to consider their own roster. And the thing is, just 1 year earlier, they had a solid first-round draft pick, and used that pick to take the young 6'7" shooting guard Clyde the Glide Drexler. Drexler had a very modest rookie season, as he only averaged a mere 7 points per game in his debut year. But the Blazers were confident that Drexler would turn into a star shooting guard in his own right. Then, the Portland management had to consider the state of the NBA at the time. The common belief among basketball minds of that era is that in order to build a championship dynasty, you need an all-time great big man to build around. Throughout most of NBA history leading up to the 1984 draft, this appeared to be the case. In the 1950s, the 6'10" George Mikan led his Lakers to win numerous championships. In the 60s, the 6'10" Bill Russell and the 7'1" Wilt Chamberlain did basically all of the winning in that decade. And then, in recent history, the Lakers were winning championships with the 7'2" Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the paint, and the Boston Celtics had won championships with their twin tower tandem of Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish. Conventional wisdom of the time was telling the Blazers management that they needed a big man in order to succeed, and some of that belief even came from their own personal experience. You see, at the time, Jack Ramsey was the head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers, and just 7 years earlier, Ramsey won the NBA championship with a big man under his leadership, which was the all-time great center, Bill Walton. And now, with Walton long gone from the Portland roster, Ramsey was intrigued by the idea of recreating that championship roster, but with Sam Bowie in the paint instead. Leading up to the draft, Ramsey was asked about the possibility of them taking the sensational Michael Jordan with the second pick. And this is what the Portland coach had to say. "We haven't made a decision, but it is likely that we will take someone else. That isn't to say that we don't like Michael Jordan. You won't find anybody saying that. It's just that we more desperately need a center." Fast forward a bit, and now the Blazers are on the clock, and as expected, they selected based on position instead of talent, and acquired Sam Bowie with the second pick overall. and that meant that the young phenom, Michael Jordan, fell right on the lap of the Chicago Bulls, as they selected him with the 3rd overall pick. At this point, there was nothing left to contemplate. The course of the future had now been set in stone, and all the basketball community had to do was just watch and see how it all played out. Less than 2 months later, the 1984 Olympic Games were taking place in Los Angeles, California, and leading Team USA was the newly acquired shooting guard of the Chicago Bulls, Michael Jordan. With other former collegiate stars on the roster like Patrick Ewing, Chris Mullin, and Alvin Robertson, Jordan led the country to an undefeated record and an Olympic gold medal, while being easily the team's leading scorer throughout the games. You've got to wonder at this point, did the Blazers organization knew they blew it? Possibly, but they still had to see how things panned out in the actual NBA for both Bowie and Jordan. 2 months after the Olympics took place, the NBA regular season was set to begin. The Blazers opener was against the Kansas City Kings, and the Bulls opener was against the Washington Bullets. In Bowie's debut game, he scored just 4 points on 1 of 5 shooting in 23 minutes of action, while Jordan's debut game resulted in 16 points on 5 of 16 shooting in 40 minutes of action. At this point, it was still too early to draw any massive conclusions, but from this point on, things were not getting any better for Bowie. About 3 weeks later, Michael Jordan scored his first 40-point game of his career against the San Antonio Spurs, as MJ dropped 45 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, and 2 blocks on 67% shooting. On that same evening against the Dallas Mavericks, Sam Bowie had 0 points on 0 of 1 shooting in 20 minutes of action. By Thanksgiving week, Sam Bowie didn't have a single game where he scored more than 16 points, while Michael Jordan didn't have a single game where he scored less than 16 points. Even as a rookie, MJ was already establishing himself as one of the best players in the entire league, while Bowie couldn't seem to get anything going. Now at this point, do you think the Blazers were regretting their draft selection? Almost certainly, but at the very least, they still hadn't seen Michael Jordan perform in the NBA with their own eyes. Up to this point, they hadn't seen their top pick go up against the Bulls' top pick in a regular season matchup. But all of that would change on November 24th, 1984, as the Bulls were taking on the Blazers in Portland for the first time that season. Both teams were in the playoff picture, each with an 8-6 record, but at this point in the season, the most exciting aspect of the game was seeing how the two rookies performed against each other so shortly after the draft. Right out of the gates, the game was a high-scoring affair, as both teams were shooting the lights out. But one of the players who especially had his skills on display was Michael Jordan. I honestly don't know if Michael marked his calendar for this matchup because he took personal offense to Portland picking Sam Bowie instead of him, but it certainly appeared that way, as MJ was extremely aggressive on both ends of the court. One of his incredible finishes was so remarkable that it looked like something only a prime Julius Erving could have pulled off. Over the course of the night, Jordan displayed all of his hang time and his mid-range artistry, leaving the Portland crowd dumbfounded at what could have been theirs. By the end of the night, the Blazers' collective firepower overcame Jordan's talent, as they ultimately won the game with a final score of 141-131. Sam Bowie didn't necessarily have a bad game, as he put up 11 points and 6 rebounds on 5 of 7 shooting. On the other hand, Jordan looked like the all-around superstar that he was, as he dropped 30 points, 8 assists, 6 rebounds, and 3 steals on 10 of 24 shooting. At this point, the writing was on the wall, and the Blazers could no longer hide from the truth. They blew it, and they knew it. They had heard about Jordan dominating the game on a global level. They knew he had taken the league by storm and was putting up insane numbers in only his first few weeks in the league. And now, they had seen him outplay their top draft selection with their own eyes, right in front of their disappointed home crowd. Although I don't think Sam Bowie was a bad player overall, people eventually viewed him as a massive bust due to his potential being ruined by career-crippling injuries. On the other hand, Michael Jordan simply went on to be the greatest icon in basketball history. talk about a missed opportunity. So what do you guys think? Was this pick by the Portland Trail Blazers the greatest mistake in basketball history? I look forward to hearing your suggestions in the comments section below. Thanks for watching as always. Make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.